Victor Bergen famously said, "Shoot first, ask questions later." It does have to be acknowledged that he was speaking about methods of practice, that you do not have to set out with a clear meaning or objective for your work. In my case, up to this date, it has not been a choice. It might be better to say I have shot first, now I understand I need to ask questions. Some context is required. My photographic journey started 4 years ago when I acquired a proper camera and a book to teach me the basics. I have never formally studied photography, never looked into any depth at the masters of the craft, or indeed really knew any seminal works. I simply wanted to take pictures of what caught my eye. To say I am on a steep learning curve is an understatement. Journeys of self-exploration are often uncomfortable, and to think about the why of something is not easy. Truth be told, my initial motivation was as a means of helping my mental health. As someone with type 2 bipolar disorder, whether I like it or not, this has shaped my practice. However, going forward, I do not want to make it about that label. Luke Goddard said, "Photography is truth," and the idea that photographs are a way of seeing what is truly there, born out of its scientific beginnings, has never fallen from the public consciousness. Yet my practice has never been about presenting what is there, but more about imposing control through the lens on the chaos within. My way of presenting a world in a manner I find comforting, or indeed as I wish it to be. Sontag said, "Although there is a sense which the camera does indeed capture reality, not just interpret it, photographs are as much an interpretation as paintings and drawings are." I find myself agreeing with Sontag's view. My own practice has always been an interpretation of that which is around me. Although many shots are instinctive, they are always carefully framed, and I am very much trying to present a very controlled sense of reality, something which in future practice may be interesting to try and move away from. In some respects, but by no means all, my motivation has been about shooting that which I find beautiful or compelling. This might explain why I've been drawn to the work of Ansel Adams, and whilst not wholly agreeing with the view of the F64 group, I do find a desire to incorporate his style and approach to my own landscapes. His wish to present the world as he visualised it rather than he shot is something I connect with. I want to further develop my composition and editing skills to lead to a naturalistic style, but still achieving the visuals I experienced. After all, in his words, you don't take a photograph, you make it. Recently I found myself being drawn to the idea of photography as a means of narration. Lucy Suter says, "It is possible to read photographs in relation to other images by the same photographer. I have attempted this in a limited fashion in a sequence of shots I named A Modern Prometheus, based on Frankenstein. This was a deliberate choice to invoke a sense of exclusion that the creation felt in the novel, by using images of a statue by Antony Gormley. Whilst Barthes' terminology is used in reaction to photography, I had a punctive moment in which I felt the loneliness on seeing the statue. As Suter says, many photographers want to make personal images that feel true to their own emotional experience. My concern, as Suter raises, is such images can be trite, self-involved, failing to take control of what they communicate, which might be the case in this sequence, especially after seeing how many times this image has been taken by others. Therefore, it is my aim in future practice to be mindful of this, to be reflective, to research, and trying to ensure that I do not fall into this trap. Now, having reflectively looked back on my practice, where I thought there was little in the way of cohesive theme, I have now identified several. Firstly, I have been drawn to documentary-style portrait shots. Until this point, I was convinced that I had an aversion to shooting people, and I would even say a fear of it. Yet there is a definite trend here. Now that I've been introduced to the works of Henri Cartier-Bresson, I find myself somewhat fascinated with his style and concepts. I can see elements of similarity and want to encourage them. He said, "Inside movement there is one moment at which the elements in motion are in balance. Photography must seize that moment and hold immobile the equilibrium of it." I think about this in relation to faces. I find myself hunting for that moment of expression, a thought or emotion, something more authentic than looking into the camera and smiling for it. Sean O'Hagan of The Guardian points out that many in contemporary photography find his views outdated. Camera technology, digital revolution, and postmodernist thought have possibly rendered him obsolete. However, I think incorporating limitations into my practice in future to learn or develop some of the skills he is famous for will still be an interesting and rewarding exercise. Tish Murtha's work has also captured my attention. Her documentation of social poverty in 1978, with its striking style and brutal realism, is something I am really drawn to. Her framing and subject choice really strike a chord. The lived experience is something that fascinates me, especially when it relates to social commentary. I believe further research could inform the selection and presentation of my images in future work, to ensure that I am communicating clearly what I wish to articulate. Studying her works and those of her collaborators would also assist in further developing the most important theme of my work, the relationship with my hometown. I was born in 1978 and raised in the port town of Dover. It is famous for its white cliffs, port, castle, and infamous for being one of the most deprived areas in the southeast. I was raised in a single-parent family in what I now understand to be on the cusp of serious poverty. Dover has been in economic decline most of my life and has a local reputation that is less than salubrious. It is most often seen as nothing more than a through road for those using the port. This negative narrative is one I have often found myself buying into. Suter says, every artwork is experienced on more than one level, both as a moment of individual experience and also as part of a shared discourse. My work has been in the main to challenge this negative discourse. There is beauty and joy to be found. It is not simply just a tale of deprivation, decline, and dwindling opportunities. I have found myself not only looking at the key landmarks, but moments of calm or beauty in the small and often overlooked places. However, I am aware that in doing so, I may not be as balanced as I could have been. I'm reacting to my own personal biases. Unknowingly, I've fallen in with the likes of Simon Roberts and Martin Parr, who also look to our coastal communities. Roberts said, I see the British seaside as a series of landscapes through which we can trace part of our natural history, something you can clearly see in his body of work, Peerdom. He places these structures in their surroundings, even if decayed or not, and in doing so creates some truly inspiring images. I want to apply this approach to my future work on Dover, maybe as my final project, exploring the changes and gaps in the town, celebrating both its beauty and its decay, and the changes time has wrought, to not shy away from the negative. Martin Parr's work, The Last Resort, looked at working class leisure time at the beach during the 1980s. To date, my practice has not included people within context, and this may be something to explore, as people are as much the character of the place as the place itself. However, I personally find some of his images uncomfortable, almost a stereotype. Pictures are powerful means of dictating a narrative, and they can shape our perception, can define reality. Whilst I acknowledge this stems once again from my own experience, I want to make sure that I am not falling into caricature or promoting entrenched social ideas. In future practice, I want to ensure that I'm not looking with my usual bias, or at least can recognise it. What comes to mind is something that John Baldessari said. It is a matter of focus. If you believe your world is formed by what you look at, and you don't look at the usual things, then your world will change. This is something I look forward to trying.